All right, what's up, Klask people? This is David Bowie,
Hey everyone, this is Chris, Teacup Clinton.
and this is another episode of Klask Pro.
Isn't it time for the destined, time for the restless? Everybody's getting on the guest list.
All right, Chris, another episode. What's our topic today?
All right, so for the very special episode 4, we have the rules report is the name of this episode today.
So what is that? Just like all the rules that we're going to be like wanting, or is like the current rules, or
Yeah, so basically today, for episode 4 rules report, we're going to be breaking down the current rulebook for casual play, the current rulebook for competitive, tournament play, and the part that I'm most excited about in this conversation is um, discussing what we like and don't like about the current competitive rulebook and stuff maybe we would like to see added this season or in future seasons of Klask play.
awesome. What do you got in your teacup?
Okay, I'm going to let everyone, including myself, down. I did not bring a teacup today. I have this coffee cup from Taipei. I don't know if it's going to show up because the lighting in here is ridiculous today. Anyway, my friend from Taiwan, Taipei, Taiwan, is actually visiting right now here in the U.S., so I brought this mug out to honor him in his visit. So, how about
What's inside of it?
that was a lot about the cup and nothing about what's inside. So inside here, I just have some raspberry juice. It's late where we're recording today, so anything too special, yeah, might keep me up all night. What about you? You always have the best stuff, so I shouldn't even be talking.
Well, side note, this video was actually supposed to happen yesterday, and I was trying to be good, and I was drinking water yesterday, and Teacup's internet went out or something happened, and then so we're shooting today, and that changes the whole video up because now I have some more bourbon, and this one is, if you're a bourbon person, is a really good bang for buck. It's called Eagle Rare. Can be found very easily on the West Coast here, and very extremely hard to find over on the East Coast. But the show isn't about bourbon; it's about Klask. So I don't think anybody else wants to hear more about this. Let's get on to our first topic.
I know we're gonna have to do a side segment at one point. Anyway, so again, great job with bringing a great cup to the table today. All right, so real quick, I wanted to do something before we get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, and that is I just want to thank all of you guys for watching so far and for all of your all your support. David and I were talking about this before we started recording, and man, all of you are just so great, and we really appreciate it, and hope you enjoy what we're doing. Um, yeah, it's been awesome for us, a lot of fun, and hopefully you find some value in it as well. With that said, if we have time, I want to mention a couple projects that have launched outside of Klask Pro since we started recording episodes. Is that cool?
You asking me or the audience?
Both of you, but you're the one that can talk to me right now. So.
Yeah, totally cool.
Okay, so real quick, 2 really awesome projects have launched since we started doing these Klask Pro videos. One of them is klaskrank.com. So you can go on there and add yourself to that website. And basically what you can do is log the results of your matches. You can even put your club that you represent in there if you're like the club president. And like the Oli Class Club that I run here in Washington, we have our club on there. A couple of the members have signed up. You can log all your games. The other thing that you can do is go to klaskworld.com, and they have a really cool feature called the player finder or people finder. And basically you can go on there, put your information, where you're from, all of that stuff, and then include yourself in this growing list of players. And essentially you can pull up a map, has little pins, and shows where other players are. So if you're nearby someone who also plays competitively enough to include themselves on this list, you can easily find someone to maybe meet at the table and play. Have you had a chance to check any of those out, David?
Yeah, I'm on there. I'm signed up.
Good. Yeah, actually, you know what? That
I
was a
know
dumb
where
question.
you live now.
Dun, dun, dun. No, it was a dumb question. I actually knew you were on there before I asked, and I forgot because I seen you were on there first, and I was like, Bowie beat me, because that's how competitive Klask players are. Anytime we get beat, it hurts. So, anyway, sorry for letting me interrupt our episode with that information, but I had to shout it out. There's such cool projects, man.
What about the other projects?
What's that?
The ranking.
Yeah, well,
that
Klask ranking. Yep, I'm on there. I've used it a few times. You and I are actually fortunate enough to be in conversation with the creator, Chris, of klaskrank.com, and hopefully between our conversations we can share some feedback and help grow that brand new website, and see it progress to where every player that plays Klask will want to use it. So really exciting, really cool interface, especially for just getting off the ground, where it's going to be even from just from a year from now. It's going to be awesome. I'm jealous I didn't make it.
Well, you thought of it, you just didn't code it.
Exactly. There was a mistake I made early in my life where I didn't learn how to code.
We're all biting the bullet for that. So,
Amen. So anyway, into the meat and potatoes of the episode. Klask Game rules. So, really, Klask in its basic level is incredibly simple to teach. You know, small board, handful of parts that are almost obvious where they go. It's actually really neat how the design came together. But you could sum up the rules in, like, I don't know, like 30 seconds if you needed to. And essentially there's really only 4 rules, and those are the 4 ways to score a point. Now, again, this is the basic level. Of course, there's a bit more when you get into competitive and tournament play, but for basic level, just to have 2 people, regardless of age or play style or skill level, for 2 people just sit at a table and have a good time. There's only a few simple rules, mostly how to score a point. And it's a great game for that. That's how everyone gets involved, and how some people continue to grow their skill level into the competitive side. I'm curious, Bowie, if you didn't know me and I didn't know how to play Klask, and I was sitting across a Klask table with someone else who didn't know what they were doing, and you could tell, what's your quick pitch on how to play? I'm just curious.
I would say your main goal is to get the ball into their goal, and that's a point for them. The other point you can get is getting the 2 white pieces onto your opponent. That's a point for you, or vice versa. If your piece goes into your goal, that's a point for them. And if you lose control of your piece, that's another point to them, vice versa.
Yeah. That's again, that's the genius of Klask, is you can teach it that quick. I try to, as I'm walking away, I like to do this little stop and spin move and be like, and you can only do 1 score at a time. And then I walk off, and they're like, what? I want to score 5 points and win. And I'm like, it's 1 at a time. Get over it. Just one thing.
You know what's difficult with the how how you just talked about how it's simple. But then you explain that, and then you start playing it. You're just like, well, no, you can't do that. Right?
Of course.
It's like, well, no, you got to serve from the corner.
Right.
No, you can't do that because that's a double tap on the serve. Well, no, you can't. You can't do that one because the biscuit has to be facing up with the hole in the middle. You got to flip it around. It's funny because you teach somebody the basic rules, and then you're so used to playing like the competitive, like rules and the right way to do it that it starts to add up, and that's the most difficult thing when you're talking about like the difference between playing, somebody that is for the first time, and it's almost like you're just like you let things go. Like for me,
Yeah.
I do. It's just like I'm just like, whatever. He doesn't need to serve from the goal or from the corner. Like it's the first or second or third time or whatever. Just let it go.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Most of the time when I first teach the game, especially to people who have never seen it or heard of it, that's what I tend to do. I give them the basic rules on, basically, I'll just say which one of you two is youngest, and then whoever raises their hand, say, all right, so you're going to serve, and when you serve, it's from one of these two corners, your choice. The only rule, ball must be stationary, and it's best to ask your opponent if they're ready, but you can have fun and not do that. And then once you're ready to serve, you just can't touch the ball again until it crosses to the other player's side at least once. And then from there, as they're kind of hitting the ball and learning how to hit the ball, I will start to explain the way points are scored. I kind of have it down to this like little science I do now. But so then as they're just messing around, I explain the points. Once I do that, I will ask them if they're ready to actually undergo their very first game, and then at that point, depending on where I'm at, I will usually say I'll win a drink or put $5 just to get the a little bit more hyped up, and then uh, typically it ensues into a great night of fun for whoever I was teaching. One of my greatest experiences was teaching the basic rules of the game to an entire class of high school students um, that were uh, really excited to have me there and learn the game, and I was able to teach them this game within 5 minutes. An entire classroom of people I was able to teach them in 5 minutes. Had like 10 boards out, and they were able to play some games. And like, of course, there was stuff like competitive play wise. I was like, oh, I can't look at this. They're breaking so many rules. But then I saw like how excited they were, the smiles and everything, and I was like, you know what? Does not matter. The point of the game is to have fun at the end of the day. So when it comes to the basic rules, that is all that matters. So the way you teach it and have you is perfect. That's how it should be. Teach enough to get them going, and then let them have fun.
I'm still stuck on the fact that you have 10 boards. I did not know you had 10 boards.
I well, so once you start running a club, um, they become more necessary, especially if you do like I used to early on in the Oli Class Club. We ran inter club tournaments, and some of these tournaments would garner 12 plus people, and it was really annoying when I only had two boards to say, okay, four people can play, the rest of you watch and hang out, and not everyone was as committed, so they would kind of get like, oh, what this is, I just want to play. So I started to just amass more boards as I went, and very fortunate to help host the Portland regional last year, and Klask sent me some boards to help to run that tournament, and kept those for more future meets and all of that. And yeah, I kind of amassed a little bit of a collection. I mean, that's some of the collection. And it makes things like hosting stuff at schools or pub events really simple. So that's a quick little bit on my class board collection. Didn't mean to happen. Anyway, David Bowie, have you seen this? Have you seen this new rule book yet?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
So this comes in the recently released in the US 2.0 boards. Come with the 2.0 sexy biscuits. It comes with the tape, mouse tape or what have you. Um, that's what everything else is relatively the same. The rule book, however, did change, and it's a lot of pages at first glance. So you're like, if you never played Klask and you look at this, you might be a little worried, like, oh, I don't know if I want to read that kind of book to play this game. The nice thing is it's actually only 3 pages. Everything else is about like hyping up Klask, like with it, for instance, like there's the share your hashtag Klask life and becoming a Klask ambassador, which that website is currently not live that they share, but I'm sure it will be eventually, and that will be exciting for everyone who wants to get more involved. Anyway, 3 pages teaches everything. Really great imagery to help teach the game. I just want to mention that real quick in case, for instance, you or other viewers have not seen that book. It is really cool. I think they did a great job putting it together. Easy peasy to learn the game, which is nice. And then I know this is something you haven't seen, Bowie. This little guy right here, it will not focus. I tried to make it focus earlier, but I
didn't see it.
Okay, good. I made this. This is the whole rule book summarized into very few words, and I did this specifically for bars. So I will laminate this sheet and attach it to the Klask parts bag, and then a potential player can go up to the bar and check it out, just like pool balls or something like that. And then it teaches them the whole game just on this one sheet, so they don't have to read the rule book. And I've only had great feedback. So any of you watching, if you would like to get one of these for your local pub or what have you, to get people more involved, let me know and I can do that. Anyway, enough of me.
It's all about you.
No. I mean, maybe. I'm just kidding. So that's kind of the basic rules. What's is there anything about the basic rules that you feel anything about, like, I don't know, is there something you don't like, or I don't know. If you rated it on a 1 to 10 scale, what's your rating? I'm curious. Basic rules. Basic.
So I haven't read the new rule book, so I don't know if things have changed or not. I think the flick off is actually kind of fun. So if that is not in the basic rule book, but the younger age starts first, then I think, we should just, in my opinion, scrap the whole age thing and do a flick off.
You know what? I'm sitting here reading that because I don't think I recalled seeing that in here, and I don't think the flick off's in the basic book. Which, again, for basic play, I guess. I mean, it makes sense for basic play to not be in there. I suppose you just want people to play. You don't want them to have to learn this, like, what's a flick off? But yeah, it's pretty. You're right. I don't think it's in here. In fact, I'm trying to read through this. I don't even see how you pick a first player. I don't even see the youngest person starts.
Because I remember I've seen the younger person starts in the past.
I think the original. Oh yeah, no, right there. Okay, it's still here. Rule number 3 on Let's Get Started. Right there. Again, it's probably not going to show up, but anyway, the youngest player starts the game by placing.
Who invented the flick off then?
We have some genuine, research and reporting to do there, Bowie. I don't know.
Yeah, if anybody knows, let us know because I'm just curious. Um, I'm sure it's probably somebody in the class company, but it's like, where did it go from like being the youngest to being, hey, let's flick these coins, versus paper rock scissors or just flipping the coin or dropping the ball in the middle, like I've seen people do.
What is that? What
I'd
is
be
that?
Yeah, just
Like,
dropping it right in the. You know how you test the leveling?
yeah,
So
yeah.
me and my buddies that play, that's how we used to start because we didn't know. Like we didn't read the. I mean, we read some of the rule book, but we ignored some things, and we would just drop it right in the middle, and wherever it lands, like we just start going.
Hmm. Okay, a little bit of hockey there, huh? Hockey. Um, no, it's one of the it's a great question. I hope we find out. I know in some future episodes we're gonna have a few um we're gonna have a few special guests that I think will have that answer. So hopefully, if no one tells us beforehand, we can find out then. But I mean, it's interesting. You just went down this whole ladder of ways that you could determine first player that are all valid, but the flick off, by far, in my opinion, is the best. It's such a great way to start a game. Um, and The youngest player for basic rules, I think, makes sense. But yeah, for competitive play, that flick off is a huge way to determine who's going to start the game. Currently, that's the rule. And Yeah, I really like the flick off. I think it's a fun way to start the game. It's like the game before the game in this sense, with a lot less pressure.
Yeah,
So
have you noticed that? I mean, you have 10 boards. Every flick that I've done on different boards is different. I mean, am I right or am I wrong?
oh,
It's like the channels that the things travel on, like they're different from like board game to board game. Like some are deeper than others.
yeah, well, there's even this. As far as I've been told, it's like m- essentially a misprint of the games. Like it was done by a manufacturer that Klask ended up not going forward with. I don't know the entire backstory of that. That's just stuff I've heard through different articles and such. But there's these other boards, you can typically find them for a lot less on the internet than the current like standard spec board. But those ones are super deep. Um, like sometimes in some of the boards that I've seen, like the coin is like over halfway in, and I'm like, what the heck for flick offs? That's insane. So
Dude, I
yeah,
think
each
I
one's
actually
different.
have one of those. I think I have one of those boards.
Is it
I know you're supposed to be in town sometime in a month or so, and I'm gonna have to show you that I've collected. I've somehow amassed all of the old boards. So I have one board. Remember when I texted you and I said, "Hey, do you know if they made boards with like no top layer material on the bottom?
Mm,
Because I have a board that's just all wood on the bottom."
yeah, yeah.
And
No,
there's a funny story with that one too, because my wife actually found a Klask board when she was like browsing out of town somewhere at like some um like concession type of store or like like secondhand stuff.
mhm.
And she was like, I found a Klask board, and she's like, do you want it? And she showed me that it was like $20. And I was like, yeah, $20, yeah, pick it up. And I didn't realize that like it was just all wood on the bottom. And I actually have another board where it's the channels where the chips sit in, um they're like super deep. So like when you flick, it's like you have to like put excessive force, and even if you put excessive force on it, it doesn't fall out because of how like deep it sits in there. I have to show you that when you're actually over.
Yeah, which hopefully will be sooner than later. So hopefully we can hang out and get some games in very soon. But as far as I know, the boards with the like the plywood, like the painted plywood bottom, like the one I think you showed me, those are the ones that I think were considered to be like a it wasn't a misprint, but it was from a manufacturer they decided not to move forward with, and I imagine that's because of quality. I mean, they're not nearly as good, but um, I have a couple of those plywood bottom boards, and one of them I cut in half um, to take on a plane. So,
Okay.
I Frankensteined it into a little to-go board that I can practice with by myself. Anyway, so they're good for that for sure. If you ever want to learn how, I could show you how to do that. Um, so we'll use that great opportunity of talking about these boards to transition right into a completely unrelated topic of tournament play and the rules that currently govern that side of Klask and specifically our side of Klask with Klask Pro and other competitive players all around the world. The ones I imagine are the most interested in our show. So, probably the part of the segment they're going to care about the most. Um, uh, I guess the best way to start that is I think we've talked about this before. Where did you learn, uh, where did you find the competitive rulebook for the 2019 season of Klask?
Um, where did so did I play in 2019? Okay, that was the year we met, right?
Correct. It's
Um,
like you better have played in 2019.
so I believe I searched tournament rules for Klask in Google and popped up for this USKA website that had a gigantic list of rules, and that's kind of what I based off, like, as I was trying to get ready for this regional tournament, like some of these rules. I actually I didn't ever tell you this, but there were some things that I think I learned that day on the regional tournament. Um, when you were describing the rules, like I think I remember, you remember Dylan, the other guy that was with me. Um, I think we were kind of whispering each other, like, "Oh, okay, so I think that's how you're supposed to do that." So yeah, I mean, it was there were some things that we were kind of unclear about because it was like house rules, for the most part when we played. So we were really like attentively listening to you describe the rules because we were like really unsure with some of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, all I could base it off was the USKA rule book that I saw, which was lengthy, and I just didn't know if it applied or not at that time. So I just said I'll show up and see, what they say on the rules.
Yeah, well, I mean, you fell into a similar path that most competitive players do in the USKA competitive rulebook, at least in the beginning of 2019, was kind of the most prevalent one. So a lot of people, that's the one that they base their competitive play off of, including me. And you even caught me in a hiccup during our regional tournament in Portland. I recall you called me out on the flick off rules because I was still going off the USKA flick off rules, which are slightly different. And then I remember it's either you or Dylan, but one of you two pointed out like, "Oh, I thought you couldn't go beyond your own zero." And of course, I pulled the rule book up and was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm mixing the two up. That's not a good sign." So they do cross reference rules relatively well. There's a few additional things in the USKA book that stood out a little bit more or explained a little bit more smoothly, but for the most part, they work decently together. You can certainly become competitive off the USKA book, even though, as far as I'm aware, that has kind of been, in a sense, disbanded. I think there's still still versions of the USKA clubs and things that are around, but for the most part, that rule book is unrecognized by Klask, who currently holds the world championship, or at least the only world championship that people know. Um, so the reason I asked that question was to segue into that rule book and how to find it. Google works. I believe it still just brings you to a Dropbox link for the official game rules for Klask competitive play. But a really simple plug I wanted to do for an Instagram page is just at Klask Rules. Super simple. And it has the most updated competitive rules on there as pictures. So it's very easy to reference and find the competitive rules. So if you did not know that already, now you do. So in the tournament rules, you know, some of the things that I like about the tournament rules currently for competitive play is actually it's kind of all encompassing, to be honest. It's not really a specific rule. The things I really enjoy about it are the layout. Um, the layout to the current competitive rule book is really good. It's really easy to understand and it flows well. And it does a great job of pointing out the main aspects. One of my favorite rules in there we talked about earlier, it's the flick off. I think it's it makes a really interesting way to start an official match outside of the handshake, which people forget. But the handshake technically is official. If you don't do it, the game doesn't count. So start doing the handshake. Or, cling your drinks together, fist bump, anything to show respect to your fellow player prior to the match starting. So, yeah, that's some of the stuff that I like. And again, on what we're just talking about with at Klask Rules on Instagram, super simple to see that layout, and it lends really well to showing up as an Instagram page to scroll through. So, is there anything specifically about the current competitive rule book that you specifically enjoy?
Let's back up a little bit and talk about actually how us as a player and a user locates, right, the actual rule book. You mentioned that is it hashtag class rules or
No, so it's an actual page, just at Klask Rules is the account name.
I just Googled it, was unable to come up with it, so I'm gonna share. We're gonna do this live, as if I'm a regular player
That's
trying to look at
dangerous.
the competitive rule books. I know live is dangerous. See what we come up with.
Yeah. Got warm in here all of a sudden.
So, can you see my my desktop?
I can. It's alive.
So I put in class competitive rules. Do you think it will come up with what we need?
Let's find out. I'm glad you decided to do this. This is a really great way to find out.
Class competitive rules seem like it's like appropriate, right?
Yeah.
I was a new person trying to figure out the rules.
Or buoy or class tournament rules, I think might be used a little bit more.
Okay, so let's go tournaments rules. So the first thing that pops up is this class-sport.de. Is that it?
Huh? Never heard of it.
It?
No, I don't know what that is.
If I click on it, that's the first thing that pops up. So this is a WKF rulebook.
WKF in the flesh.
So you're telling me that this is no good.
Outdated. Doesn't work.
Outdated. Okay, so we can't look at that. So what's the next thing in Google that I should be looking at then?
I mean, as far as I'm seeing on this screen, nothing. I mean, there's the Reddit page, and I know from experience the Reddit page will get you there. Someone asked, where can I find the official tournament rules? And I know it works because someone linked the Dropbox into that thread, and I also personally linked the Instagram page. So I guess you use Reddit, everyone, if you want those rules.
Klask. Okay, how about this? How about we just do class competition?
Well, that's not good. um, so Board Game Geek is a very relevant website in the board game community, which I know Klask is within. Klask essentially is a board game, so it's definitely in that community, even though us as competitive players tend to set it aside as its own thing. But the Board Game Geek thread, especially the one asking about tournament rules, might have it, but none of this looks good. In fact, if one of the earlier mentioned websites we kind of gave a shout out to, either claskrank.com or claskworld.com, if either one of those want to link the Dropbox to tournament rules, you might have something there, because apparently this is impossible to find.
Okay, so you said, okay, so if I was a
Instagram.
regular person, class competition
Yeah.
rules, and you're saying a Reddit thing should pop up, which is this thing right here. And that was dated
Correct.
August 19th of 2019. Somebody said, where can I find the official tournament rules?
Which, by the way, this is a great segue, everyone listening, is if you're not on the Reddit community for Klask, the Klask, you can see it in the top of the Reddit page screen there. It's just r/Klask. If you're not involved in that and you want to grow the community, it's a great way to start. There actually is a great bit of information within that community. You can see I'm the very bottom one. This is my pre-teacup life. CS Goodnight was my username. And so I just put on there an easy way to access official 2019 tournament rules is on Instagram under the account at Klask Rules. So
if you don't have Instagram?
that's a great question, because I don't know if you can view Instagram photos without an account. If you can't, then I guess you can't play. There's the Dropbox link, though.
Okay, so somebody named Perkerdirk from
Great
5
name.
months ago listed this Dropbox official rules. Click on the Dropbox link.
I hope one day I can meet that person in a Klask tournament and we can be on the big poster highlighted as the main event, Teacup versus Perkerdirk.
So this is 2 years old, right? 2018? And this is still standing today?
Yeah, so the 2018 Klask rulebook is still going to be your current rulebook for competitive play. Now, again, that's unless they change it this year.
Okay, so as of right now, from what I can see, that if you are a player looking for the official rulebook off of a normal search engine like Google, you would type in class competition rules, go into the Reddit that pops up from August 19th of 2019, and in there, you're going to see a Dropbox link that is for the official tournament rules.
And there you have it. Easy. Why ClaskGame.com does not have a rulebook link and a find players feature or upcoming tournaments event calendar within their page, I don't know. I hope they add it soon. It's, I understand Klask is essentially a board game, and the goal is to sell the game and get it into homes and have people have fun with it. But I think the competitive end of Klask, with competitive players who will buy new boards as they use old boards, just like skateboarders and skateboards, like every skateboarder goes through skateboards on a routine basis and keep buying them, and Klask boards do wear down, and if you're really competitive, you're going to buy a new one. And I feel like that's a great area for the company to grow their customer base. And I feel like the competitive class scene will be the future of Klask. And there's just certain things as simple as, where can I find tournament regulation rules in an easy to find format? Because right now, as you just kind of shown us it is not simple. So hopefully it gets easier as we continue to grow as a community. Again, and that's what everything's about. That's why we're going to shout out every website that comes out and give people ideas. The whole point of all of this is to grow the Klask community and make more fans of the game and more players of the game, so everyone can find a different form of success within it, while having a really great time, because Klask, again, at its core, is nothing but a great time. So anyway, I'll digress. So that was a really great way to show that, by the way. That was I hadn't thought about that, so I'm glad you did. That was a cool way to just see live what we could find. And it just shows, if you're a brand new player wanting to know that stuff, the commitment you have to accept going into it, and that's if you find it. So really great example of that, Bowie.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So is there anything about the rule book that you kind of don't like?
I mean, it's funny you mentioned the whole handshake thing. It's not that I don't want to shake people's hands, and I think that it shows good sportsmanship, but I think that, like every single sport out there, it's a courtesy, but it's not an expectation. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things that's like, I mean, I'm just picking on little things right now, but I don't know if that's ever going, like, should it be a disqualifier? You know? I mean, so let's just say if the World Championship game happened at the finals,
Yeah.
right? And then for some reason there's a lot of stuff going on. Everybody was excited. We had some of the top players in there, as we would have expected. And I'm having wire problems right now. Do you hear a buzzing? Is there a buzz?
I don't hear any buzzing.
It's just me. If the World Championship game was happening with the top two players and they forget to handshake and somebody wins, and then the loser says, "Hey, we didn't shake hands in the beginning. This game is void." Like, is that actually going to get called for that? You know what I'm saying? Like, is that very official to the point where, like, a game would be recalled back?
Currently, the game sits with the ref's rule, and I will tell you by experience, if I'm the ref, I'm probably going to call it. I would probably, first, as a good ref, you should mention, if you don't see the players shake hands, you should, as a good ref, mention it. Like, hey, shake hands, kind of like right before like an MMA fight, for instance. The ref, brings the two players together for like a quick fist bump.
Yeah, I would caution you referencing any MMA or boxing fight, because there's plenty of examples of people not shaking hands, and it's almost like kind of like a ooh, like the guy is not like showing any respect here, and they're gonna like get it on, right?
I did watch one guy go to do the fist bump, and instead he got knocked out by the other guy. So I did see that.
Happens all the time.
So, I mean, if we do want a very specific reference point, though, in tennis, there's very specific rituals of shaking hands before and after the match, with the other players and the overseeing ref. And if you do not do that, it is grounds for disqualification as well. Now, to me, the reason that I think the rule is important is because it makes sure that your pro players are not only skilled in actively pursuing the game, but it also makes sure that all your pro players are disciplined within the rules of the game. And there should be and will be those, like, wildflowers that are like do their own thing, and that's good for any sport, in my opinion, but there should still be some governing body. And I think one of the ways to do that is make sure players are showing mutual respect even in the heat of a battle. And I think a handshake's a great way to do it. And again, the great thing about the rules, it doesn't have to be a handshake. You could cheers your drink or a hug, or like you see it in the like in the background. of the World Championship behind you there, Bowie, some of those matches will conclude and begin with a hug or something like that instead, and that's fine as long as there's a mutual respect of the game that's about to take place. And um I really like it, and we actually in the club, depending on what we're doing, like the extent of play we're doing, if it's free play, just having fun, that's not a big deal. But if we're doing like official games, official matches, um, we have stopped 3 or 4 points into the first game saying, "Oh, we didn't shake hands," and we reset, and nothing ever happened before that. So we shake hands and restart.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, we take that pretty serious. See, we got lucky when we came um, to that bar near you guys for the club versus club tournament. We also were shaking hands because we're learning who we were. So we kind of got a 2-for-1 out of those meetings. so, um, so yeah, it's a great. That's a really great rule to point out. That it doesn't necessarily need to be about the game to be in the rule book, and also to make a stance on what differing thoughts would be. So, yeah, that's a good one, Bowie. I'm glad you brought that up. I've never thought about it. So now it's like in my head, like, oh, should we shake hands? Like, I don't know,
No,
viewers.
no. I mean, it's a really good act of good sportsmanship. I just, I wonder if that will ever come back to bite somebody. If there was, it's not the fact that they didn't want to shake hands, but maybe they just forgot.
Yeah, and either the players or again the ref, depending on the level of game, hopefully is playing a role on ensuring people don't forget or at least holding people accountable. I agree with what you said at the beginning of that statement, and that is it would be awful to see a very important game in like a world championship happen and then be totally void at the end because they didn't shake hands. Like that would be such a poor reason for a game to be off the books. So hopefully they shake hands and we never have to deal with that. But it's a great point.
I think another rule that, and this is one of those rules that I think I've heard a lot of professional Klask players talk about is the ball leaving the table. Like as of today, and where it stands is that the side that the ball leaves on is where it's served at.
Yep.
And I've heard, I guess you can call it, contrarian rules or viewpoints of that, which is the person who hits the ball out of the table, the board, is the person that's going to get served against because you could do it on purpose.
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so you can do it on purpose and as an advantage. This is a great way to segue into stuff we just want to have added to the game, and this is a rule that I am personally passionate about. One that I actually first heard from the Boyce duo, and that is what you just said. Where if you and I were playing a match and I hit the ball out purposely or by accident, then you would actually take serve. And at first, I admit I was against this rule. I was like, "That no way, that makes no sense." Like, especially if it's an accident, it makes no sense. And then it occurred to me, like, pretty much every sport I can think of has the essentially what's like a foul that if you're like soccer or basketball, the person who touches that ball last, it actually goes to your opponent for being brought back into play. And to me, especially as Klask comes away from being a game into a sport, it makes absolute total sense to me. So I'm all about this rule being added. Just so you're aware, I am now biased on it because I am very passionate about it being a rule that's added in the future for a couple reasons. One, if it is an accident, then yeah, that was a bummer, and sometimes that will happen. Just like again, and I'll bring up basketball. If you're going for the ball to get it from going out of bounds, but you still tip it at the end, it's a bummer. Like, did you want it to happen? No, but the other team takes the ball and you move on. In Klask, I think it should be the same specifically because you can take the ball out on purpose. And I've seen it done, and I admit I've done it, especially if I'm in a nerve-wracking game and I need a second to breathe because maybe I'm just being bombarded with either great hits or biscuit plays or something. I will pin that ball in the corner and pop it out just so I can get a second to be like, oh, grab this ball, take a breath, get back into serve. Because again, early on in my Klask play, serves were like my thing. Like that's what I focused on, was different angles, positions, everything. I know this is something Klask Italia practices heavily, is their serve game. I was no different. That's what my focus was. So for me, if I could pop the ball out and get a serve, not only did I slow the game back down to more of an even feeling, but now I'm in what I consider to be my strongest shot. And I was like, even though I was doing that for my own advantage, I must admit that if I pop the ball out on purpose, it should definitely go to my opponent, giving me less of a reason to want to do it. And if it happens by accident, again, I think that's um, a very small con for the advantages you come out of it. So I feel like that was a really long-winded reply to your question. My apology.
That's I want to get in your mind, Teacup.
I'm so angry. Hey guys, I told you I was passionate about that rule, okay? Everyone knew that going in, and now I just showed you by throwing my microphone down aggressively. Make it a rule now. Can you still hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, nothing actually broke. That's good. So that's a great rule. Are you kind of becoming in the same camp as me on that? Like, are you thinking also of that becoming the rule, or are you still kind of on the current traditional rule of it goes whatever side the table falls out on?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. You know, if you hit it out, then the other person gets to serve. Um, you know, the fortunate or unfortunate thing about the team I play with is that some of them have gotten really good with trying to work around rules to their advantage. And that's one of them, right? Like being able to just essentially take the ball out of play in their favor for the serve.
Yeah.
So it makes complete sense for me to change that rule and make it that, you know, the other person gets the ball if, you know, somebody hits it out.
Yeah, it will exactly. Exactly is the point too. And there's two other little things about it that I'll just mention since we're on topic. One is it gets rid of the issue of what side of the table did it actually go out on. Depending on the point of the game, like if it's 5-5, and if that ball goes out anywhere near the middle plane, it can turn into quite a heated argument on who gets to serve. So this gets rid of that because it's usually pretty darn clear on who touched the ball last. So I like that about the rule, the possible rule change if it ever gets put into a rule book. The other thing that's really nice about it is it demands even more control out of the players. For instance, I know a few players that are all kind of the smash and bang type of player, and the ball as a result will often leave the table. This, is something where they might not want to smash as much because if they do and the ball goes out on their hit, they're giving me serve. So it does demand a little bit more control and finesse within the game, which I think is important for the growth as well. So for one of the rules we'd like to see added, that one is probably the one I would like to. I mean, like if I could only pick one, that's probably it. Another one that's it's not really, I guess, kind of related to what we talked about earlier, and that is the flick off. If the rule was during the flick off, the winner picks either to serve or they can choose what side of the table to start on. What kind of feedback or I guess you could say either people agreeing or disagreeing do you think a rule like that would create?
I think it's fair. I think I was in the crowd. Well, I just didn't think about it, but um, I think that we all have a preference on a side if you play a lot, especially if it's in a certain room. There's always that side that feels better than the other. Um, so the one way that you can deviate from that is saying, the person that wins the flick off gets to choose the side. I was on the camp of the winner of the flick off gets to choose the side and gets the ball. But it would make sense if you're going to choose the side, then you give the ball away for the first serve. Which for me, the side is way more important than the serve, based off of preference. And it's hard for me to. And this is kind of an asterisk side note that when I was playing in the U.S. Championship last year, there was a side that I played better on. And you don't realize that when you're in a completely different setting. There's cameras and lights and everything. You just don't know. Like you're just sitting down because it's whatever. But when you kind of take a step back and look at the videos and things like that, you realize that there was a side that you did play better on, and there's no opportunity for you as a player as your tenure grows with the game and your experience to say that's my side. Like I want that side. So how do you get that side versus just running to the chair? Because that's kind of how it was set up, right? Which is first person to just pick a chair, you get it. And that can change a lot. And I think that any Klask player that's played many games will know that there's always an advantage on certain sides depending on how you're feeling. And Daniel on the Italian team mentioned, and I never thought about this until I saw this on one of the posts, which is that the sides are built differently. One's hollow and one's not. I just never thought about that until he talked about that. He stated that in a post that I saw on Facebook, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's totally right. That's true. So that means that hit could potentially be very different. I don't know which hit is faster. I've never looked at. I've never actually rated the speeds of it or anything like that. But I imagine if I had to take a educated guess that the hollow side is going to bounce a lot faster because there is a space in between which acts kind of like a trampoline. Mm-hmm. I could be completely wrong, but the point is that every side for any Klask player, one is going to be better than the other. So the advantage is always that you choose the side that you're going to play better on because at the worst case scenario in the third game, you get your side back.
Yep. Yeah. So yes to all of that. Yeah. It's and great shout out to Daniel who did mention that in a post. And it's true. And it's not only the density of the sides either. I'd like to also point out that let's say your strongest hit is going, let's say you're right-handed and your strongest hit is going to your right wall for a right wall bank. Well, depending on your skill level, you might still be utilizing the numbers to figure out what angle you need to hit for that. So you might prefer to play with the numbers to your right, specifically because then you can see, oh, I know if I hit towards the front of the two at this kind of speed, I'm mostly always going to bank into the goal. So then it's up to the defense to make the move. Whereas if you put that same player on the other side where the numbers are now mirrored to the left and no longer on their right, they might not have as easy of a time determining where that shot is for them. And again, as you play more and become pro level in the sport of Klask, that shouldn't matter as much, but it still will to some. And And to me, I liken it to football in a sense. In American football, there's a coin flip, and the winner of that coin flip gets to choose. Do you want to receive the ball first, or do you want to go on defense first? And you might want to just make a statement by choosing the side of the board you prefer, and then also saying, I rather start on defense, because if I can get the first point from defensive stance, then I can maybe assume some form of control in the game right out of the gate. So, I mean, of course, it won't always work out that way. If you might give the ball to the other player and they might ace instantly. You might just be like, "What did I do?" But the nice thing about that is it's the player's decision um, to determine if that's what they want to do. Um, so it's another one of those rules. It seems like such a minor thing, but it would be, especially when you play as much as we do, it becomes relevant. And I think for any of our listeners right now that are definitely like all against this rule, like why change it? Um, I would love to hear your thoughts, and then also maybe it's because you haven't played maybe you've played in tournaments, but maybe you haven't. And as you play more, I think it's a great way to understand the level of skill someone has. Is if this is something they agree with, it's a pretty good show that they understand the board more than an average player, and are probably pretty darn skilled. So
Yeah. Or we could just scrap the whole change rule thing and just change the board where numbers on both sides and it's both hollow.
yeah,
It's completely even.
I'll give you that. Yeah, I've heard not as well said as you just did. I've heard people get there through an exchange of words. That would also work, and it would be an interesting way to do it for sure. But you did mention your environment earlier on. That would matter too. For instance, where our club meets, uh, there's a wall directly behind one side of the table we like to play at, and then it's open on the other. And for me personally, I don't know why, but when I'm on the side of the table where the wall's directly behind me, I feel more like I feel like I can zone in and focus easier for some reason. I have no idea why.
You're just being a diva. That's what you're just being a diva.
I'm glad someone called me out. Had to be Bowie. So yeah, I mean but it's a thing to consider as we grow our skills. Um, what do you think about a delay a game rule? I know air hockey has this rule.
Air hockey?
Air hockey, professional tournament play air hockey has a
So there is a professional air. Funny that you said air hockey because I was looking up something, and you know how you do YouTube, right? That you just go down the whole path of just looking at random stuff.
yes.
I went and watched a foosball
Mm.
world championship, and I couldn't believe how good foosball championship players are. I just had to add that in there because you just mentioned that there's air hockey championship, which I don't know why us class players aren't doing that because you'd think we'd be pretty good at it.
I admire.
Side note, I'm starting to feel a little tipsy. I've had a lot of whiskey throughout this entire podcast, so my words are going to start slipping here pretty soon.
It's all right. I think we're almost done, and then you can have as much as you want.
No, I gotta go. I gotta go to sleep. I gotta wake up at 4:45 for work.
Okay, don't have as much as you want then. Don't do that. So, anyway, so yeah, professional air hockey, which you can search like you just mentioned on YouTube, look it up. It's insane. If you're wondering if we should play professional air hockey, look into it. It's maddening. Maybe we would be good for like 5 seconds, but anyway, it's really good. They're really highly skilled. Air hockey just isn't for me. I don't enjoy the I don't enjoy it outside of like an arcade. Klask has a lot more strategy and depth and things of that nature that I prefer. So anyway, that's personal for me. But the delay of game in air hockey exists. Essentially, it prevents a player from shuffling the puck back and forth between, basically passing the puck back and forth amongst themselves to try to get the perfect shot, or it prevents them from, kind of sticking the puck back in their corner and waiting for the defense to get tired and then they hit it. It prevents all of that. And it's a really fast one, too. The delay of game in air hockey, forgive me for not doing the proper research before this episode. I didn't realize I was going to bring it up, but I believe the air hockey delay of game is like, it's quick. It's like 5 or 10 seconds is all you have. I would love
That's
to.
not that. That's not that fast.
Well,
I mean, 10 seconds is a long time.
it might only be 5, but either way, if you're like trying to pass the puck back and forth to yourself to get a perfect shot, 5 seconds probably goes pretty quick. But again, I could be totally wrong. It could be a lot more, and that's awesome for them, I guess. So delay a game in Klask, I would like to see, especially as biscuit play becomes more relevant, especially with the Sexy Biscuit 2.0. Because there is legitimate reason, and we've seen it in the 2019 World Championship, where you can pin the ball in your corner and exclusively pursue biscuits. And I don't think that's bad. I think it's awesome to completely upend the ball of the on the pitch and then just go straight to nothing but biscuit play. I do think it's awesome. I just think there should be a limit to it. And I'm not saying a very short delay of game. I would say like 10 or 15 seconds, like enough to make everyone like, okay, let's get back into the game. You're like, you had fun. That's cool. But let's start watching the match. And I think it would be really nice for there to be a delay of game, 10, 15 seconds. So you still have plenty of time to pin the ball and play biscuits for a few seconds, And then, basically, what would happen in my world if you were penalized for a delay of game, it would just be a reset and a reserve with your opponent taking the serve. So it's not even a huge, other than that point that might have been in your advantage is gone. So it's not like you lose a point or something like that, but it's enough to say, hey, I need to pay attention to how long I'm taking, manipulating these biscuits during the middle of a match. And this is mostly something you would have to do with a ref. So this would be almost exclusive to tournament play, because you don't want the players to be focused on a clock while trying to play. Outside of an internal clock, like any other sport with a delay of game. But I don't know. It's an interesting one. I'm not as passionate about it as, let's say, the the reserve or the flick off. But any what say you to that kind of rule?
I think it's a valid rule. I think you put a reasonable timeline on it. 10 seconds. 10 seconds if you count it. I mean, I'm not going to do it, but if I were to count 10 seconds right now, 10 Mississippis, that's a long time. I could probably hit, I don't know, 30 biscuits in 10 Mississippis if I really tried. So, 10 seconds is enough. If you're spending any more time than that, then, you should get DQ'd for that round or, whatever it is and lose a point. So, I think that delay of game is appropriate. And I know that there is a rule somewhere, and maybe that was when I was looking up the USKA rules, that there is a delay of game rule that is, I think, interpreted by the ref. But it's like that's going to vary from ref to ref, right? Like that's an opinion of it. So, I don't know. I agree. I just don't know where I would say the right amount of seconds would be at for that rule.
Yeah, and I think I was just kind of looking at the rules real quick for the official Klask rulebook, tournament rulebook. I think you're right. I think there was a determination on delay of game The other thing that happens a lot, especially for like me when I started the USKA rulebook, the WKF rulebook was the more prevalent one. And in that one, you actually could not play biscuits while the ball was on your side.
Right.
So it fixed that issue. And when the new rulebook came out and said that you could play biscuits with the ball on your side, I was openly against that. I have since completely changed. I think it's much more exciting how the current rulebook has it laid out to where you can manipulate biscuits with the ball on your side. And it allows for some really creative plays and maneuvers. So anyway, hopefully a delay of game could be brought up. I think it would be an important piece to future tournaments, especially as biscuit play becomes more relevant. In 2019 tournament, we already saw an amazing showcase of biscuit play, and that is undoubtedly just going to grow. So hopefully it's something they consider. We kind of mentioned this between the two rule books and finding the rule book. In just a few words, because this is kind of our last main topic in this episode. What the heck is the importance? In the end of the day, what is the importance of a clear rule book?
I think the great example that I was able to show live on our podcast was it's super difficult to figure out if you're talking about competitive play. We know what the rule book is that's given to you in the board game, but like as you can see right now with the competitive play rules, there's some of it that's very gray line, and we don't know. And I think that we're in an early stage right now where hopefully you and I and everybody else that's involved can put some input in there and then grow the game and make things better by just overall experience and time. Um, so yeah, absolutely. I think that at some point we'll players would expect that there is a definitive answer to everything that we've brought up on this podcast today.
Yeah, 1000% agree. And in light of that, too, this is going to be a very like dramatic example. But in American football right now, there's a lot of concern with certain rules, such as the pass interference rule, because it's not very clear. It seems to always change depending on the game and who the ref is. And there is some fans, the people I consider to be close friends, that have essentially, in a sense, vowed to not watch certain. Like they used to watch every football game. Now they only really watch the team they like because they just don't. The rules are becoming like cringe-worthy to them. And I know it's a very dramatic example to give in comparison to where Klask currently is. But for the people who are passionate about the game and play it on a competitive level, that's how we feel about the rule book. It needs to be clear. It needs to be incredibly accessible to those who care to find it. And for me, this comes down to one perfect example that happened in the most recent World Championship, the 2019 World Championship, between two players, which was, I believe it was Pakamo and Tomac, I think. I think is that match. I've posted about this before. On one of my Instagram pages, but I can't recall if that. I feel bad. I'm pretty sure it was those two, but there was a simultaneous loss of control.
Oh yeah, that's them. That was both of them. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So essentially, if I recall correctly, Pakamo loses control, and in the process of Tomac grabbing control, he himself loses control, ending with Hakamo having sole control of both his striker and Tomac, at that time, Tomac's striker. Amongst all of that, Hakamo scores the goal as well, which becomes a very important piece to this. In every match I've watched and played, outside of this one, the person who ends up with sole control at the end of the exchange is awarded that point. In this case, no point was awarded, and Tomac served. That was the ruling by the ref, which, as far as I've heard, both players decided that was the best thing to do, because at the end of the day, the gentleman rule applies, and what the players decide amongst each other is what will occur. So that's what happened during the tournament. So that's fine. At the end of the day, they agreed, and that's what happened. But the ref should not have let it get that far. The ref should have made the clear call that, hey, whoever ends up with this, whoever had control at the end of the exchange is the winner of the point. And the thing that bugs me the most about this, well, what turned out to be a non-point and a turning point in the match, is if you get rid of the loss of control aspect of this point, Pakamo still scored the goal. So why you would not at least score that at the very end of the whole thing is beyond me. They like I said, they did a non-score. They just reserved with Tomac's favor. I'm glad the players discussed it. They came to a conclusion. They went forward with what they did. I can't help to feel sour about it, because it's one of those things that is not clearly in the rule book that should be. And if that's not the rule, then what is the rule? It can't be a reserve every time there's a simultaneous loss of control. So we can discuss that in a future episode, but I just wanted to point that out as one of the very many scenarios that occurs during a match. In this case, a very important match that can happen. And if you don't have a clear and concise rule book, then you get left with these moments of debate on what was the right thing to do. Maybe it's great for Klask to have these, because it gives us a really great topic to discuss every now and then. But to me, it's an easy one to award a point to someone, and it was completely just reserved. And just like in the post I did, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on it too, listening. If you've seen that point or non-point, what your thoughts were. And there's our good buddy Bowie getting some water. Good idea. Hydrate.
I'm actually pretty shocked that we didn't even add that on our rules we'd like added. That's such a good point. The whole loss of possession thing. That is probably one of the most confusing ones, because when your striker gets stuck on that corner piece, it's like, when do you stop trying to go for it?
Right.
So if your opponent is stuck on the corner, like, are you like still going for the shot? Or what happens if you're just like, oh, you're stuck, you're done, and then the ball goes into your goal? Is there a time? Is there like a time limit on it? Like, how long are you loss of possession? Yeah, that's the whole loss of possession thing is one of the hardest things, because you at that point you're just like, do I go for the ball to protect it from my goal, or do I go for the striker? Or if their striker is already over on my side that's unattainable, I should just assume that it's my point. That's super gray line rule right now that's going on.
Crazy good example, Bowie. One that I rarely think about, because you're right. Even more so now with the tape. I forget the actual. It's like PFTP tape or something. Anyway, the tape that is required on the striker now for tournament play. Which, quick side note, the rulebook does not currently tell you if both ends, the striker and controller, need tape, or if just the striker does. As far as I've been told, it's just the striker, but I know some people do both. Who knows? It's not in the rulebook.
I do both.
Hopefully soon. See, you do both, right? So hopefully soon it'll be in the rulebook, because I believe it's just the striker. Someone will correct me at some point, I'm sure. Anyway, now even more so with that tape, it makes it a little bit more of a possibility to get that striker off of the corner screw, which I think loss of control on the corner screw is great, personally. I think it's a great little piece of the game that builds depth in it, that it requires you to stay in control, especially in a corner. You can't just get all wild. So again, I love the fact you can lose control in the corner. I know some people don't. That's why I mentioned that. I personally do like that. But you're right. At some point, when do you call it? Most of the time at this, I'm sure you've experienced this. Both players just kind of go, okay, it's over. But if you're in a major tournament, let's say with money on the line, I play $100 games quite often. So I put a lot of money.
Whoa, wait a minute. How often do you play $100 games?
Probably every other week or so.
No way.
Yeah.
Every other week you're playing $100 games.
Yeah.
Dude.
It's usually
Money's different. Your money's different.
Hey, so I'm pretty sure last count I'm even right now, so I haven't won a lot and I haven't lost a lot. But there's myself and a couple other players will do $100 bets. And if just so you guys know, watching, if you ever want to get a crowd, you just go to a public space, pull out a couple 50s or a couple $100 bills, throw them on the table, and people will watch. It's a lot of fun, to be honest. That's why we do it. Typically the winner will buy the loser a few drinks, so it's not all a loss. But
what would be a great episode, because I've never put that much money on a game, is when we do get a chance to meet up, we should do $100 game.
Yeah, let's do it.
Recorded and one-time session. It would be just the one game, $100. That'd be the biggest bet I've ever done on Klask Game.
Yeah, no, we'll do it, man. I actually, because I have $100 matches every couple of weeks, I have a specific budget just for this, by the way. So
that is insane. I cannot. I know you've done it before, but I didn't think it was that frequently.
Yeah, no, we do it. To be completely transparent, it lines up with our paydays. Just so you're aware, that's why we do it every 2 weeks. So me and the other players, we land on the same pay cycles, so we get some money in our account, and we try to throw down. And the whole reason I mention that is to show that yes, Klask is a game, but when you especially get some stakes, $100 or even just some really intense bragging rights, the rules definitely matter a little bit more. And one of them would be if a striker got caught on that corner and you're like, well, how long is this going to go on? Because there's $100 on the line and they're still 10 seconds later trying to get it off because they think they can. There's not a clear-cut rule. And when that kind of money or stakes are on the line, the other player is going to fight you on that. They're going to debate you on, hey, I can do this as long as I theoretically want. Luckily, gentlemen rules apply, and we usually make peace and just take it. But that would be an interesting thing if delay of game became an official rule. That would be an easy way to fix it. If you're stuck as long as the delay of game, then you're stuck.
Agree.
So that was a lot to say that, but yeah. Anyway, David, Bowie, definitely let's do this $100 match. I think I can't think of a better way for us to do a match for our channel than that. So
yeah, that'd be awesome.
That would be cool. So that's all I really had for rules. Do you have anything additional before we get into our last segment here?
I don't think so.
Okay. So last episode 3, which is 2019 World Championship coverage, we told everyone about a new segment we wanted to include going forward called One Question, Two Answers. Essentially, we're going to go through all the social media, the comments below this video. And if anyone asks a question, or in the case is somewhat for this question, no one asked a specific one, so we kind of took one from the past and are using it. If you ask a question and we pick yours, we're going to answer, we're going to say it out loud here on the video and then answer it in our own way as quickly as we can for you. So this episode's One Question, Two Answers segment is in a sense not asked directly. Well, I guess it was asked by, I believe his name's Alvin. I'm really horrible with names, everyone. So unless you have a nickname for Klask, I probably am going to have a time remembering it, but I will. I promise I will get it. So hopefully it is Alvin. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir.
It's Alvin.
Okay, good. So he created, and I've seen him before, but he created the battle box, which is essentially the plexiglass surrounding the board to help prevent biscuits from leaving the game. I've seen a few different versions of this. He seems, at least on social media, to have developed it further along and better than anyone else. So that's why he gets my current nod of credit for it. I know I've seen on Instagram stories Klask, the company, playing around with their own version of them. So I know they're kind of messing around with them. And I don't think it's a trade secret because, again, it was on their Instagram account. Anyway, Alvin brought to our attention the battle box and even offered to send us a copy to kind of play test, which we haven't gotten to yet, but we are soon. And of course, this answer will change once we do get to play test that. But essentially, the one question is thoughts on the battle box. So now we have to do our part, Bowie, and give two answers. You want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay, so answer number 1 of 2. Thoughts on battle box. I'm very interested to get it on the table and to experience it, because my initial thoughts, and I've said these thoughts publicly on social media before, is I am against them for competitive play. I think in a very public space like a packed bar, they're kind of brilliant because it can help maintain the pieces within the board and make it a little bit better to play casually. For competitive play, I have concern, and that concern stems from the fact that if the biscuits are going to be maintained more often on the board, then one very specific strategy, which I used early on in my playing career, but I don't use as much, that was I play a guy named Cool Hand a lot, Cool Hand Lenny. He is like a biscuit wizard, the best that I personally ever played. And again, early on, it was hard to beat him because of this. And I developed a strategy early that was just knock these biscuits off the darn table so I can beat them at my game, which was, which was just game planning and making your shot. So that's what I would do. If you use a battle box, that strategy is null. It is void, doesn't work. I'm sure you could eventually hit the biscuits out, but from what I've seen and heard, it is very difficult to hit a biscuit out of these battle boxes, which is great, again, for casual play. There's parts of it I think can increase the strategy of competitive play. So that's why I'm excited. Alvin, if you're watching, that's why I'm excited to get this one that you built and to give it a go, because I honestly am going to give it my best play and keep a very open mind. And hopefully it changes my mind, because I do think it could be a great asset to competitive play if it pans out the way that I've been told. So that is answer 1 of 2. On to you, Bowie.
I've never played in the battle box before. Alvin, thank you so much for sending us some prototypes that you've built out for us and sent over for us to test out. My overall impression of the videos I've seen is that there's definitely a place for plexiglass boxes around the class table. As it stands right now in competitive play, my game is that there is no box around the table, because at any point in time, I have the ability to remove the biscuits if I wanted them gone. And from my understanding is that that's going to be very, very difficult to do if there is a plexiglass box around the table. So that changes the game. And if the game forever is changed to be utilized with the battle box or whatever we're going to call it, then fine. I'll have to adapt and learn how to play that way. But as it stands today, is that if you can remove it with a 1-inch wall or something like that on the Klask board, then
on the current board, I believe it measures pretty much 1 inch. I'd have to double check that at some point, but I believe that's what it is.
So as of right now, is that's how the game is played. So to change that is going to change everyone's game. So I agree that the bar scene and not trying to lose Klask or not trying to lose biscuits, it's going to work out well. And it's going to be fine. In tournament play, I don't know. I'm undecided on if it's going to make sense or not. Obviously, I've heard a lot of people say that it kind of gets in the way of visually of the gameplay a little bit. I don't know. I'm looking forward to really testing it out, playing the game with the players that I play locally here. And we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, great answer. It sounds like you and I are pretty close to the same thoughts, so I'm excited. Again, Alvin, thank you for sending them. We'll have them on the table soon and hopefully give you some great feedback and see if it alters this answer. In fact, maybe we'll do a recap soon and let everyone know what our final thoughts are. So with that said, that was one question, 2 answers. Hopefully you enjoyed the question and the answers. If you have a question that you would like for us to answer, just leave a comment below or ask it on social media, and we will go through them and pick yours at some point, I'm sure. Well, it's one of our favorite things to say because then we get to plan our next episode. That's a wrap.
And cue music.
Yeah. So anyway, everyone, thanks for watching. Bye for now. See you soon. And in a couple weeks, we have a special guest that we're going to interview. We're excited about that and hope everyone tunes in for it. And that's all I'm going to say on that. No more teasers, if you will. So, buoy.
And then really cue music.
Isn't it time for the destined, time for the restless?